Lou Eyrich, costume designer for The Prom. Welcome. The movie is adapted from the recent Broadway musical about like a group of Broadway stars who fight for a gay teenager who wants to take a girlfriend to prom. Now, the first and most important question for such an extravagant production like this one is what exactly was the sequins budget on this?
That's funny. We had a very good budget. For once I wasn't I wasn't home sewing on the floor of my house on a Saturday night.
And how much did you use the looks from the Broadway show as sort of a jumping off point for the film? And how much did you and director Ryan Murphy sort of strike out on your own for a different creative direction?
Ryan had a very specific, kind of like a refresher button. He had a very strong color palette he wanted to follow, and we were all like huge fans of the Broadway production, but we did our own thing entirely.
And going from the Broadway stage production to the big screen, like is it sort of like everything gets bigger? You kind of like want to go for broke in terms of making all the looks pop and just the shine and the color.
Yeah, and Ryan wanted to really make sure we showed a division between the people coming from New York, from Manhattan, from Broadway, coming to this small town in Indiana. So he wanted to make sure that there was a stark difference between this. I'm from the Midwest, so I don't want to sound insulting when I say a rather bland look. Let's just say not as colorful as the troupe coming in from New York. This band of fading Broadway actors who think that they're much more grand than they are.
And the film kind of starts with this grand opening number, where the Broadway actors are attending a premiere for their new musical based on Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's this incredible establishing sequence in terms of who these characters are and what their personalities are and what their kind of lifestyle is. But it's also a lot. It seemed like a lot of work because there are a lot of dancers and a lot of background actors and a lot of like, was that the most complex scene to costume or like the most costumes maybe for the film?
Yeah, I'll say yes in the fact that it was establishing this group of Broadway stars. It was establishing for the very first time. So and it was a lot of sequins and a lot of glitter, and it was about the showbiz of it all. And it was because we really wanted to get it right. There were a lot of dance numbers that we had many moving parts to consider, but yeah, I would say it is. And we did it early on, and it was night shooting and on set, the wet down, and you had women in high heels dancing. And so it was hard in that I've done musicals before, but this was a lot of very active jumping over couches and things and being lifted up onto tables, and I just wanted to make sure nobody got hurt. So it was kind of like holding my breath the whole time. We ended up getting all the shoes custom made for Nicole and Meryl so that they were very sturdy and didn't cause bloody feet by the end of the night.
And speaking of designing for musicals, with so much choreography, like how much attention goes into making sure the clothes not only look right for the film, but they also move right for the actors who need to dance, who need to jump over those couches.
Yeah, I mean, it really does only work together. So we worked very close with the choreographer, and luckily they got to have weeks of rehearsals before, and we would sit in, we would video. We would tape it so we could study it and see all the action, and then talk when in the fittings, talking to each actor, like, what are you comfortable in? And we would try different costumes on, and I think maybe the highlight of my career is watching Nicole Kidman and Meryl Streep dancing in the fitting room with all their moves and kicking their feet, and it was great. But it was very integral. But the work between the choreographer and our department and making sure everything on the day there were no accidents. And like sequins. Anybody who's done dance numbers, like you can't have sequins on the body if they're picking them up because their hands will get all ripped up. And it's just all those things you think about, that a lot of the lifts and that everybody will.
And you mentioned custom designing shoes for Marilyn Nicole. How much of the wardrobe overall was created anew for the film, and how much of it was sourced?
This one, it was about 50-50 because it was contemporary, so we were able to shop a lot of it. All the dance numbers most of them were custom made. For James, a lot of it, all his tuxedos and stuff were custom made, but everything else was very shopped. A lot of the prom dresses for the girls were made, but it wasn't a huge made-to-order show, considerably to some of the other things we do with Ryan.
And it seems like, just based on the characters' personalities, that Dee Dee Allen, who's the Meryl Streep character, would be possibly the most fun to dress, just because even in her day-to-day wear, it looks like she's dressed for the stage, very theatrical. What was it like working with Meryl Streep and sort of getting those looks for her that really established her personality?
It's so funny how easy it was. Like, I was, of course, starstruck, and she had a lot of changes. So it was very, Ryan was very precise about it, used a lot of the same words. It was colorful, it was theatrical. She really cares about the way she looks and presents herself. So we had quite a few fittings too, and Meryl she's very hands-on with her costumes, and likes to try a lot of different things, and she plays in the fitting, and she's the one who came up with, I don't know if it made it into the final cut, but like there's a hat on and she throws the hat and she takes her cape and she plays with it, and that was all that all came about in the fitting where she was playing with the clothes, and I was mesmerized. But we did these huge lookbooks for her, and we sat down and went through page by page of who Dee Dee might be, and then her and I spoke, and then we went over to Ryan, and Ryan weighed in, and then we did another pass, and then once we got this book done, it was kind of like our like an old-fashioned paper doll thing where we could say, okay, this look could work for scene 42, and then we would start building or shopping, and it was a great experience.
And addressing the high school characters in this small town, it is more subdued, of course, than the Broadway characters, but also like they still pop in a way that you always get from kind of a lot of Ryan Murphy productions, where like there's a certain sense of heightened reality to it. So what was it like sort of walking that balance and trying to keep these characters down to earth while also kind of expressing them in a bold and clear way?
We followed a color palette pretty strict, which is like we kept them to look like high school kids and believable, but then also did want to elevate it so it wasn't, so it still would catch your eye. And part of our, one of the elements we worked with all departments was contrast. So if you would have a red wall, there would be a yellow costume. So some of it was subtle, some of it was lighting, some of it was literally the set decorating with our clothing. And you probably wouldn't notice it unless I point it out and then you watch it again. But it was almost scene by scene where we would make sure that we were doing this contrasting between the lighting, the sets, the clothing, the locations and a wall. And that was fun. I'd never worked that way before. And also just between the character Emma and Alyssa, the idea that Alyssa came from a family where she was afraid to come out and had to pretend she was the cheerleader type and dressed that cheerleader type and always be really well put together. And Emma was being raised by her grandmother and didn't have much and did all her, mostly thrifting her clothes and putting it together in a fun way. So that's kind of what we were playing with, is that she was thrift store girl and Alyssa's mom probably shopped all her clothes, but we tried to make it interesting also to watch, so it wasn't like reality, but with a little kick, like you said, heightened a bit. We did that intentionally, yes.
And speaking of Alyssa, her mother in the film is played by Kerry Washington, who, the character is this repressive kind of, PTA, head of the PTA. But late in the film, she has this, one of the boldest looks in the film, I think, like this multicolored, this incredible gown. Like, was that created or sourced, or like, it feels like it just like she was born to wear that.
It was Gucci, and Gucci did loan us the dress, and it was intentional in that it was a turning point for her. She was able to come out of her repressive state and be accepting of her daughter and loving her daughter, and coming through the tunnel in that sparkly dress represented her opening her arms and saying, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to have a bigger and brighter view.
Thank you so much for your time, and I will bring you back to talk to you with the other panelists in a little bit.
Thank you so much.